When it comes to editing your cells, there's basically three ways you can edit them. For example, let's say I want to edit the cell I'm in F8. Let's say that $415 wasn't the correct amount that this employee made in sales for the month of April, and let's say it's something like 545. Well, at the most basic level, you can just click on the cell and then just type over at 545 and hit enter. And that works. Another way, if you just want to go ahead and change one number within the cell, like let's say we don't want to change the whole cell, $545, we just want to change, let's say instead of 545 it was 535. We just need to change one number. Go ahead and double click on the cell. When you double click, your cursor's flashing within the cell. You can then use your arrow keys on the keyboard and move it before or after the 4, hit the delete key, type in the number 3, hit enter. That works as well. Of course, this may have been easier for such a small number just to click on it and type in 535, right? But what if you get to the employee's social security number or a longer number within a cell and you realize that just one number is off, like let's say instead of an 8 it's a 5. I mean, wouldn't it be easier just to go ahead and change that one number instead of having to remember the whole number and retype it in again? Well, I'm going to double click and drag and select the 8, type in 5 and hit enter. To me that's a lot easier than having to recall this whole number and type it in. Now, not only can you double click to get the cursor within the cell, but once it's within the cell, if you double click again, it will select the whole cell. Then you can just start typing and it will type over it and then hit enter. And well, that doesn't look good, so I'll hit undo. But nonetheless, you can either click on the cell, type over it, or double click, and it selects the whole cell. I'll hit enter. Finally, you can actually click and select the cell, and then up in the formula bar, go ahead and add some extra numbers like 0.54. Make your changes there. Maybe it's not 535, click and drag over the 3 and type in 4 and hit enter. Actually, the purpose of the formula bar, when I click on the number below, is it's supposed to display the formula or function. Like for example, let's say that this cell right here is a result of a bunch of other cells that have been added up. Well, if it was, when I click on the cell, it would show the formula up here, the function like B5 plus D5 plus C5, whatever cells that I've added up, and then down here would be the result of that formula. So you can come up here and change the formula and define what cells you want to add, subtract, or multiply by, etc. And you'll see this in the future training videos on formulas and functions. But for right now, if there's nothing up in there, it just displays the basic value of the cell. Of course, when I click on F4, there's no formula, it just displays the text. And here it just displays the number. Okay, one final thing to kind of kick this up a notch. I'm going to go ahead and click in cell A1, and let's say that Dream Notes is a trademark, and I want to put in the symbol like letters TM. Well, to do so, I want to be able to get inside because I want to put that trademark just at the end of Dream Notes. So I can either double click here and then move my mouse over and click after the letter S, or hit escape on the keyboard and come up here in the formula bar. That works just as well. And then click after the letter S. And then what I want to do is I want to come to the Insert tab, go over to the text group and click on the symbol button. I'm going to click on the subset arrow here. And I want to scroll down and look for letter-like symbols, which is TM for trademark. Go ahead and select it, click Insert, and you can see it inserts it right there. Looks good. Click Close, and when I'm finished, just hit Enter to accept it. Okay, this spreadsheet was created in the very first cell, which is A1. Let's say I made a mistake. I'm supposed to have the title of the region above here and then the actual regions that we made cells within. So if I crunch this all too close in the upper left hand corner, I have no room. I can actually insert blank columns, or I'm going to click on the row header, blank rows, above what I have here in cell A1. And I can do this one of two ways. I can either, when in doubt, right click on the column here, this whole column, the A column, and left click on insert, and you can see it shifts everything over to the left. Or by the same token, I can also, click on, you see that arrow there? That black arrow when I hover over the row header, when I click on it, it selects the whole row. Then I can right click and left click on insert, and it inserts a row above whatever I have selected currently, which at the time was in A1, or B1 was Dream Notes, and then it just shifted it down. Which, by the way, for those of you who are new to Excel, let me emphasize that when somebody says click on the A column, usually new students will click in the A column. That's not on. Click on the A column, you click on the letter A here, which is the column header, the heading for this column, or the row header, which is number 11 if I click and choose to select the whole row. Okay, let's say I made a mistake and I inserted, or it doesn't look good, I don't want this extra column here, this space, or maybe the row above. Now if it's recently done within the workbook and I haven't closed out of it, of course you can always hit the undo arrow up on the quick access toolbar, right? Or if you save this and you open it back up, your undo's not going to be there. It's only during the current session that you're working on with your workbook, because the moment you close out, you won't get that undo arrow. Well, first of all, let me click on the A column so you can see it. When in doubt, right click on the A column, and then go down and left click on delete, and it just pulls everything over to the left. Think of it this way: when you insert rows, or whole columns, when you're inserting, it pushes the data over to the right and down, of course depending on if you're inserting columns or rows. Anytime you're inserting, it's over and down. Anytime you delete, it's going to be up and to the left. It's going to pull the data that way. Again, depending on if you're deleting columns, which will pull you to the left, or deleting rows, which will pull you up. Let me show you another cool little feature. Let's say I need to insert 3 rows above my A1 here. Instead of right-clicking and inserting and right-clicking and inserting, I'm going to undo that a couple of times. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click and drag and select the first 3 rows. See, there's my little black arrow. Once I see that, I'm going to click with my mouse and drag down, and you can see where it says 3R. That's the 3rd row. In fact, I can go down to the 4th row, let go, and then with those still selected, I'm going to right-click on any one of these rows here, these row headers, right-click, and then left-click on insert, and boom. It inserts as many rows that I had selected, which is 4. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that, or I can right-click on those selected headers and left-click on delete. That works just as well. Of course, you do have the other option. I'm going to click off in a blank area here, and you can use the tab here, inserting your rows and columns. In fact, you'd think it'd be on the Insert tab, but it's not. It's on the Home tab. And it's over here in the Cells group, clicking on the Insert arrow, and you can see Insert Sheet Rows or Columns. I'm not inserting cells, I'm just inserting either rows or columns. So you can see where my cursor's at. It's in B4. So what's going to happen if I insert a row? It's going to be above the row 4. See? Inserts a whole blank row above it. So if I click in cell B4, and I click on the Insert button again, and let's do columns, you can see it shifts everything over to the right from originally what was in column B. It just pushes it over and leaves everything in column A. Go ahead and undo that. So to me, it's a little bit easier to right-click on these and insert than it is to click in a cell, come to my Home tab, go to the Cells group, and click on Insert. I'll leave that up to you. Now I have a question. What if I didn't want to insert a whole row or a whole column? Let's say, for example, I'm looking at the sales here for the US, around in this region here. Instead of having January's numbers here, what if I wanted to shift everything here in this range over 1? So I can open this up and maybe type in the actual person's names, because maybe, whoops, I need to type in their names next to their social security number. Well, if I made a mistake like I did up here, maybe I put this too far in the upper left hand corner and I want to insert some new rows, I can also insert some new cell ranges, and when I insert a range, depending upon what I selected, it'll push as many cells over. So for example, if I just select this and insert, I can actually just push everything that I selected here over, depending on, again, if I'm inserting columns or rows. So if I'm inserting a column, it'll push these guys over. If I'm inserting rows, it'll push these guys down, but just whatever I have selected. So for example, I want to select January and all their numbers and push them over, so I can actually type here next the employees' names. Now I could just select here and push the numbers over because the employees' names would go here, right? But if I just do that, then January is going to be stuck here, and I'm going to have employees' names down below, and that's not going to make any sense. So I want to actually shift this whole range over 1. To do so, again, when in doubt, you can always right-click the range and left-click on Insert. Instead of inserting a whole row or column, I get a new little pop-up that says, look, do you want to shift these cells, the range you have selected, to the right or down? Now if I shift them down, it's going to go down, and I don't want to do that. I want to shift them to the right, right? Of course I can do entire row or entire column, but that's not the point. I want to just shift the range. So yeah, I want to shift them to the right. It's already selected. Click OK. Boom, it shifts everything that's selected that's to the right of it over 1. That's kind of cool. Then all I have to do is just start typing in Marte, and that looks great. So hey, even if my data's collapsed and I made the mistake and I need to insert more data, I can shift the range of cells that I selected over to the right or even down. In fact, what does it look like when I shift them down? Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and click and drag and select the range here and hit the delete key on the keyboard. And I'm going to select this range and I'm going to shift it down. Now what is this going to affect if I shift it down? If I shift it down, it's going to shift actually everything that's underneath it down as well, and it's going to affect this column as well, just shifting it down. Well, let's see what happens. Let me select it. And instead of right-clicking and inserting here, again, you can come up to the Home tab here, go to the Cells group and click on the Insert button, and we want to insert cells. Not rows, not columns, but cells. Of course, when you hover over it long enough, it gives you the pop-up. It gives you the shortcut Control-Shift equals. In any case, click on Insert Cells, and I want to shift them down. Let me click OK. See how that works? It affects everything below it. It doesn't insert a whole new row where it affects everybody here, but it just affects this column, and it shifts it down by as many cells as I've selected, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it shifts that whole column down for as many rows that I have selected. That's affecting everything below it. nothing above it, and not affecting any of its neighbors next to it. So shifting cells doesn't affect the neighbors, it just affects the neighbors either directly below you or to the right of you, again depending on if you're inserting a column or if you're inserting rows. Now how do I get this back? Well, by the same token, I can click and drag and select as many cells. If I just select one cell and I delete that one and say shift up, so right click, delete, shift up, it just does one at a time, right? And that takes too long. So I'm just going to shift the remaining cells up by 4 cells by selecting the range 4, right clicking, deleting. Now it's asking, do you want to shift the cells left? No, I want to shift them up. Excel tries to be logical and tries to determine what your next move is, and it may not always be right. So that's why I wanted to make sure that I eyeballed this and, well, made the correct choice by shifting it up and not left. So click OK and it pops them back up. Then I can select this range here, equal amount of cells for the range I want to shift, and delete this column here to shift everything over to the left. And of course, instead of right clicking, which is my favorite, you can come here to the cells group on the home tab and also click delete. And you want to delete cells. You don't want to delete whole rows or columns, just go ahead and do, delete cells. Now do we want to shift them up or left? Just left, because we want everything over here pulled over to the left here. So I want to leave it the default and click OK, and it looks good. Finally, if you really want to get fancy, remember holding your control key, you can select multiple ranges. Like if I go ahead and click and drag, then I hold my control key down and I click and drag here, and I click here, I click over here. You can go ahead and right click that and then delete it and shift the cells. I mean, this could be messy, right? If you shift the cells left, everything's going to be pulled over to the left and you're getting rid of these, and whatever's to the right is going to be filling or taking its place. So like I say, you can really mess this up. And it works the same way if you want to select a whole column here, control click column F also, and column H, and also control click, holding down the control key the whole time, row 10. And then of course going ahead and clicking on the delete button here and delete sheet columns. Now notice it can't delete the sheet row because it's focusing on columns now. So in any case, I'm going to click off in a blank area. For right now, it's best to stick with the basics. Your simple inserts and deletes. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, as soon as I upload a new video, you'll be notified instantly, and you can do that by coming over here and clicking on my face. You can also click here to support me, so for $2 a month, you can have access to over 2,700 training videos, all ad-free, and for a few bucks more, you can have access to my exercises, instructor notes, quizzes, certificate of completion, and a whole lot more.